Hi, welcome to Positively Positive. If you're new here, I go by Sam and I have genital herpes, HSV2. Today we're talking about testing. What 3 tests are available, the one amazing test that is technically available but very hard to get, when the specific tests need to be done in order to be accurate, and how to get tested. I also want to say loud and clear that all STI results are null and void once you have a new partner. Whether or not you used protection, a new partner means old results are not valid. 80% of all herpes carriers never experience outbreaks and have no idea they carry it and are potentially spreading it. So before we get to sexy times, let's talk about herpes, baby. The first thing I want to make explicitly clear is that herpes testing is not included when you ask your doctor to be tested for everything regarding STIs and STDs. If you truly want everything, you need to ask for the 10-panel STD test and side test for trick. It's trichomoniasis. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that. But this 10-panel test will cover HSV 1 and 2, gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, hepatitis C, and HIV 1 and 2. These are all things that can be carried silently. So, the exception to HSV testing not being included is if you have an active outbreak with bumps, blisters, sores, or anything else the doctor can swab. If you have no symptoms and just want to get checked to know your status, a test for HSV is not included unless you specifically ask for it. In fact, the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in the US, actually recommends against herpes testing without symptoms. In Canada, it's handled the same way, although experiences do vary greatly across the provinces with regards to how willing doctors are to routinely test asymptomatic patients for herpes. If you're listening from Mexico or outside of North America, I'm not as familiar with how it works, so I highly recommend you go onto your country's government or public health website and use the search tool. Type in herpes and see what your country's current state of herpes testing recommendations looks like. You may also be able to find here country-specific studies, which is really helpful in realizing how common the virus is in your area. Now, the actual testing. I'm going to talk about 4 tests for herpes simplex virus. The first and most obvious, most common test is a physical swab of an active outbreak. In order for this test to be accurate, you need to get to the doctor within 48 hours of the outbreak appearing. There are some cases where it's still accurate after this period, but false negatives are likely at this point. This is not a test you have to push for. Any doctor with half a brain, granted, some don't even have that, would swab for herpes if you have clear physical symptoms. I personally recommend going to a sexual health clinic specifically, as they deal with this more often than, say, a family doctor. These people are looking at STI infections all day, every day, and they're usually more familiar and a bit more informed than a family doctor. I do say usually. But when you're getting swabbed, use your voice that God gave you and ask them if they're swabbing for herpes. If they say no, I don't know why in God's name they would. Just request it. This is your body, it's your life, and you need to speak up for yourself. And if you're nervous about doing this, I get it. I know it can be hard, but all I have for you is tough love. Ask for it. Request it. Stick up for yourself because no one else will. Doctors and nurses are not gods, despite what House MD would say. They do not know everything, and they do not always have all the answers. And you do not owe them trust. Now, like I said, with an active outbreak, sores, discharge, bumps, blisters, things that look like pimples, I really don't see them not swabbing for herpes, so we should be good there. That's how I was diagnosed. Well, actually, my doctor took a look and confirmed it visually, gave me meds right then and there, and said we'd have the lab results in a week, but she was pretty confident it was herpes. I have heard of doctors diagnosing visually like that and not taking a swab, and that's not cool. If your doctor looks and says it's herpes, no need for a swab, request it. They are being negligent, and it is within every right of yours to make them take a swab. You cannot tell if a herpes outbreak is HSV1 or HSV2 just by looking at it, and it is important to know which type you carry. In the long run, it doesn't really matter. Herpes is herpes, but it's good to know to manage expectations as well as for conversations with future partners. Swabs will tell you which type of HSV the outbreak is. Now, that being said, just because your swab comes back positive for one type does not mean you don't also carry the other type. It just means that particular outbreak was that particular type. So if your swab is positive for HSV2, you could carry HSV1 asymptomatically as well, which, in all honesty, is extremely likely, as over half the global population carries HSV1. Okay, I think that I have swabs all covered. Now, this leads me to blood tests. There are 2 different common blood tests for herpes simplex virus. As testing is not regulated, one or both of these blood tests may or may not be included if you're already getting a swab. I really want to make sure everyone understands that herpes does not live in your blood. Antibodies do. Antibodies are the immune system's response to infections and viruses. These 2 tests are looking for that immune response. They are looking for antibodies to HSV in your blood. If you have ever been exposed to HSV1 or HSV2, you carry antibodies in your blood. Now, I have read from an alarming amount of people whose doctors have said to them, "Oh, you've been exposed to the virus, but you're not infected with the virus." This is one of my biggest grievances with doctor-patient conversations about herpes. Let me say something loud and clear. If your doctor can tell that you've been exposed to the virus, it's because they saw antibodies in your blood. And if there are antibodies in your blood, the virus is in your system. If it wasn't, your body would never have made antibodies. And if the virus is in your system, you can spread it even without ever experiencing symptoms. Okay, blood test number 1. It is called the IgM blood test. This tests for new antibodies. It is testing for the immune system's initial reaction to the virus. This test is not accurate for very long after infection. After 7 to 10 days, these antibodies disappear. So, as you might imagine, this test is highly unreliable. False negatives are possible if the antibodies weren't caught in time. Also, it has happened where this test has come back positive during a recurrent outbreak, not the primary outbreak after first infection. So, this test is highly unreliable. IgM test for HSV. Sometimes good, but never really great. If you have a horrid outbreak, the first is almost always the worst, a positive swab, and a positive IgM test, it's pretty safe to say that this is a new herpes infection. The second blood test we have is more reliable. This is the IgG type-specific blood test. This tests for long-term antibodies. This is the test you want your new potential partners to get. The long-term antibodies are detectable in the blood 3 to 6 months after infection. Our bodies need time to adjust to the virus, and our immune system takes a while to build up antibodies against it. There is no set amount of time for this buildup, as everyone's immune response is a little different, but you're probably in the clear at 4 to 6 months. A positive IgG test will tell you that you do indeed carry the virus. This test will most likely be negative if you take it too early. That would be a false negative. Now, this happening is unlikely after the 6-month mark and extremely unlikely after the 1-year mark. Some people even have positive IgGs well before the 4 or 6-month mark. It all depends on that individual's response. But if your IgG is positive, you have herpes, baby, and you've had it for a while. Had contact with someone yesterday and today your IgG test is positive, even 2 weeks ago? Yeah, that person did not give you herpes. You already had it. Remember, over half the world carries HSV1, and 1 in 4 to 6 people carry HSV2, which is why it's so important to have new potential partners get an IgG blood test so they can know their status before it ever comes up that you could have been the one that gave them something. Also, as someone who has been through a pretty bad primary genital herpes outbreak, I'm gonna go ahead and guess that you don't want anything else either. Because I don't. Who knows where your new partner has been, who they've been with, or what else they carry. I'm good with my little HSV2 status, but I'd rather not chance anything else unless this person is super dope and I get to make an informed decision on how I handle sexy times with them. Cause your girl ain't cutting off sexy times, but informed sexy times are the most sexy times. Yeah. So, the IgG blood test is a great test to know your herpes status. Now, depending on where you live and what insurance looks like for you, you may have to pay out of pocket for this test. A doctor will most likely ask you if you've ever experienced symptoms and/or cold sores, and when you say no, they will advise against this test. Request it anyways, go to a new doctor if they refuse. I have heard people who have no problem at all getting it from their family doctor, a walk-in, or Planned Parenthood. I have also heard people who have to push for it and shop around even after visiting or calling those same places only to be refused. If you have to pay for it, pay for it. Your sexual health status is a vital piece of information for yourself and for your partners. Something I have to include here when requesting this test is that you want the type-specific test. Type-specific IgG blood test for HSV, herpes simplex virus. If you already know you have HSV1 from a swab 2 years ago, but now you have a new partner and they have HSV2, so you both decide to get tested and you both get your positive results, but those results aren't type-specific, that test was pointless. Now, if your partner believes they're negative for both, but their test comes back positive with no type, there's no way to tell if they already have the same HSV type as you or not. I'll say it one more time, write it down. HSV type specific IgG blood test. Okay, I think that I've made that clear. So, a super important point I want to bring up about testing is seeing your actual lab results, holding the papers in your hands or having access to the online files. A lot of places where you get tested say if you don't hear back from them in 2 weeks, you're in the clear for everything. What they're not telling you is that if you never showed symptoms or expressed concern, they will not inform you of a positive HSV result. In the medical community's mindset, if HSV isn't bothering you with outbreaks, knowing your status is not important. The CDC states that they don't see a change in people's sexual behaviors if they test positive but are asymptomatic, and the emotional weight of a diagnosis is far more dangerous than the virus itself. It is my personal opinion, and I know for a fact many others in the HSV community, that this pointed decision to not test properly and to not inform people of their status is only feeding into that exact emotional weight of diagnosis. If everyone who carried herpes knew, no one would give a shit and there wouldn't be a stigma, because with both types combined, 2/3 of the world carries herpes. Everyone has herpes and it's not a big deal. It's the same family of viruses that causes chickenpox. No one gives a shit that you had chickenpox. Shingles? Same family of viruses. We feel bad because shingles hurts like a bitch, but no one really cares. Mono? Yep, same family of viruses. Ooh, the kissing disease. One joke and then people forget about it. I remember when I got mono when I was 17. I was terribly sick, I had no voice, no appetite, my throat looked and felt like the remnants of King's Landing after Daenerys torched it to shit, and no one cared. I remember hearing that it was something I would carry for the rest of my life, but no one seemed to care. I remember thinking, wait, what? I'm gonna have this virus in me forever? Well, no one seems to be addressing that fact. Not my doctor, not my friends, not my family. I guess it's fine because no one seems to care? This is how herpes should be handled. It's the same family of viruses. It's also extremely common. It should be just as boring telling a sexual partner that I have HSV as it is telling my coworker about the time I got mono. No one cares. You got sick, you carry antibodies, sometimes it causes a skin condition now, and life goes on its merry way. I'm going to be uploading whole episodes on herpes misconceptions and where the stigma actually comes from so you can see why it's so ridiculous, but enough of that for now. So, the final test I want to talk about is called the Western blot test from the University of Washington. This test is considered the gold standard of herpes testing and is supposedly 99% accurate. Their virology department does it, and it tests for IgG antibodies. Remember, those are the long-term ones. Outside of the US, good luck getting this test. And inside the US, good luck getting this test. The most recent price I've heard quoted was $450, and that was in the fall of 2019. To my knowledge, insurance will not cover this. Like I said at the beginning, what you really want to ask your doctor for is the 10-panel STD/STI test with side test for trick. This will cover HSV 1 and 2, gonorrhea, chlamydia, syphilis, Hep A, B, and C, and HIV 1 and 2. These are all things that can be carried silently with no symptoms, where you don't know you carry it and are passing it on. Now, having trouble with getting this full screen? I got you. If you're in the US, get your Google on over to stdcheck.com. That's stdcheck.com, stdcheck.com, and select the 10-panel test for $198. This will give you the lab forms, you go to the nearest lab, bim bam boom, you have results in a few days. Depending on your insurance or where you live, you may be able to get all that for free anyways, from your doctor or the clinic or wherever. In Canada, you can definitely get free testing for chlamydia, gonorrhea, HIV, syphilis, and hepatitis B and C. Head over to the local public sexual health clinic. Make sure you check their hours online beforehand, as there's always a lineup before they even open. Note that this does not include herpes simplex virus 1 or 2, thus the point of this entire episode. Alright, babies. All I really want is for us all to be out here getting our sexy times on as informed, responsible people. You can still hook up. You can still bang whoever you want, whenever you want. You can still have a long-term monogamous relationship. Just do it responsibly. I know that I am personally way more excited, way more free, and way more trusting when I'm with a partner and we both know exactly what's going on with our sexual health. That knowledge allows me to be comfortable and bring my A game in the bedroom. And my partner and I have already established respect, before we've even revealed our birthday suits. Being responsible is the sexiest foreplay. Thanks for listening. Share my link with anyone you think it would help, or if you just want to say hi, I would love that too. I'm on Instagram at positivelypositivepodcast, and you can email me positivelypositivepodcast@gmail.com, or you can message me directly through Anchor or wherever you're listening. I'm out here, okay? I keep my real name private online as a personal preference, but it will be me reading all your messages. You are not alone. I'm living positively positive, and you can too.